A dinosaur mother saves her baby from hunters. The jungle was alive with whispers. Ancient ferns swayed in the mist, giant dragonflies darted through patches of sunlight, and far above, the distant cries of pterosaurs echoed like ghosts across the primeval sky. Among the shadows of towering conifers, a mother Tyrannosaurus Rex prowled silently, her powerful body cloaked by the dense green. Her amber eyes scanned the forest floor as her nostrils flared, catching every scent, every vibration, every whisper of life. But this time, her hunt was not for prey. She was not seeking food. She was protecting something more sacred than her own hunger, her baby. The little one, barely 2 months old, waddled beside her enormous legs. Its scales were softer, its teeth still small, but its eyes burned with the same wild spark of survival. It nipped at insects, tripped on roots, and occasionally let out a squeaky roar that made its mother pause and nudge it back towards silence. For here, silence was survival. Danger did not only come from other predators lurking in the undergrowth. There was a new kind of threat, one far stranger and more sinister. These were not raptors with sharp claws, nor massive sauropods competing for territory. These were creatures unlike any the mother had seen before, two-legged, but not dinosaurs. They carried strange weapons, their bodies draped in skins not their own. They were hunters, and their target was not the forest itself, but her baby. The hunters had been watching for days. Drawn to the valley by rumors of a hatchling T-Rex, they saw the infant not as life, to be cherished, but as a prize, something rare, something to cage, something to trade for treasures. And so, with spears sharpened and nets woven from fibers tougher than vines, they stalked the mother and child. The mother's instincts told her something was wrong. She could not smell them clearly, for they masked themselves with mud and smoke, but she felt the tremor of alien footsteps behind her. She did not yet roar. Roaring would give away her position. Instead, she pressed her head low, nudged her baby beneath a fallen tree, and listened. Her massive tail swayed slowly, her breathing steady but deep. Then she heard it, the snap of a branch not broken by hoof or claw, but by human hands. The hunters were close. The snap echoed through the forest like thunder in silence. The mother T-Rex froze, every muscle tightening. Her baby squeaked softly, unaware of the danger, but she hushed it with a gentle nudge of her snout. Her nostrils widened as she drew in the heavy, damp air, picking up traces of unfamiliar odors, burnt wood, leather, and a strange metallic tang. Not the smells of her world. The hunters crept closer, hidden behind a curtain of vines. They were 5 in number, each moving with calculated precision. 2 carried long spears tipped with sharpened stone. 1 bore a heavy net rolled across his shoulder, its fibers glistening with fresh pitch to strengthen the weave. Another carried a torch, though unlit for now, ready to blind and confuse if the beasts resisted. The last, their leader, moved with the calm authority of one who believed he was already victorious. He raised a hand, signaling silence. His eyes, cold and calculating, followed the faint prints in the mud. The giant footprints of the mother were easy to see, but it was the tiny ones beside them that brought a cruel smile to his lips. "There," he whispered. "The hatchling." The hunter's plan was simple, at least in their own minds. The baby was the treasure. Small, manageable, and valuable beyond measure. They would not fight the mother directly, for even the bravest would be crushed beneath her jaws. Instead, they would lure her away, distract her with noise and fire, and while she defended herself, one would seize the hatchling. They believed they were clever. They believed nature could be tricked. But the mother was no ordinary beast. She moved slowly now, guiding her baby toward a dense grove where tree trunks rose close together, creating a natural shield. Her instincts screamed danger, yet she did not panic. Panic would expose them. Instead, she lowered herself, body pressed near the ground despite her immense size, and urged the baby to stay still. Her eyes narrowed at the shadows between the ferns. Something moved there. The baby, however, was restless. It nudged at her leg and gave a chirping call for food. The sound carried, soft yet distinct. One of the hunters' heads snapped up, hearing it. He gestured wildly, pointing toward the grove. The leader nodded and crouched low, signaling the net-bearer forward. The trap was set into motion. One hunter circled wide, scraping his spear against stone to create sparks. Another banged his weapon against a fallen log, mimicking the growls of smaller predators. The noise was intended to confuse the mother, to make her think a pack was closing in. At the same time, the net-bearer crept closer to the grove's edge, every step deliberate, waiting for the moment when the hatchling would peek out from under its mother's shadow. The mother did not move. She listened. Every sound was false, she realized. Too rhythmic, too controlled. These were not the calls of wild creatures, but imitations. Her jaws clenched as she tasted the deception in the air. She tilted her head, one golden eye focusing on the hunter nearest the grove. His heartbeat was loud, his breath shallow.
Prey.
The baby, curious and unknowing, took a clumsy step forward. Its tiny feet squelched in the mud. The hunter's fingers tightened on the net. Just one more step, and he would spring. But the mother moved first. With a sudden burst of power, she lunged from the shadows, her roar exploding through the jungle like a storm breaking mountains. Birds scattered into the sky, monkeys shrieked from the treetops, and even the hunters staggered back in terror as the sound rattled their bones. Her massive jaws snapped just feet from the net-bearer, forcing him to stumble backward into the dirt. The baby squeaked in fear and darted back beneath its mother's belly. The hunters regrouped quickly, trying to shake off the shock. The leader snarled, waving his arm for them to hold their ground. "Don't falter," he barked. "The beast protects it. Separate them." The hunters spread out, circling, their eyes locked on the hatchling. The mother placed her body squarely between them and her child, her tail lashing like a whip, her roar still reverberating through the forest. She towered above them, her teeth glinting with saliva, every muscle trembling with restrained fury. But the hunters were relentless. They hurled sharpened sticks into the ground near her feet, not to wound but to provoke, to test her movements. Another beat the earth with his torch handle, creating vibrations to unsettle her. The leader raised his hand once more, signaling for the net-bearer to make a second attempt when the moment came. The mother's chest rose and fell in deep, rumbling breaths. She knew this was not a battle like the others she had fought against raptors or rival T-Rexes. This was something cunning, something coordinated. They were not striking in rage but in calculation. And that made them dangerous. She lowered her head, growling so deeply the ground itself trembled. Her baby pressed close to her leg, chirping anxiously. She nudged it gently, her touch both comfort and command. "Stay behind me. Stay silent. Stay alive." The jungle held its breath. The hunters tightened their grip on their weapons. The mother T-Rex dug her claws into the earth. The first clash between beast and man was about to ignite. The first hunter, emboldened by his leader's command, lunged forward with the net, aiming for the baby. The fibers unfurled in the air, a black web descending toward the hatchling. But before it could fall, the mother's head shot downward like a thunderbolt. Her jaws snapped with terrifying force, shredding the net into useless strands. The sound of fibers tearing was drowned out by her guttural roar, a sound that shook the canopy itself. The hunter stumbled backward, his weapon destroyed, his courage faltering. But the others pressed on. One thrust his spear toward the mother's chest, testing her reflexes. She swatted it aside with a single swing of her massive tail, the impact sending the man sprawling into the undergrowth. Another hurled a sharpened dart, which grazed her side. The sting was minor, but the pain lit a fire within her. Her golden eyes burned with primal fury. Her baby squeaked and pressed itself tighter beneath her body. It did not yet understand the difference between play and peril, but it understood fear. The mother turned, her massive bulk shielding it from every angle. She was a wall of flesh, muscle, and bone, an immovable fortress. The hunters regrouped, circling again like wolves around a bear. They shouted in strange tongues, their voices overlapping in a chorus of strategy and desperation. The leader's commands cut through the noise. Strike from behind. Keep her turning. Drive her from the grove. They knew they could not defeat her in one direct blow. Instead, they sought to exhaust her, to force her into the open plains where she could not hide. There, perhaps, they could find their chance. The mother sensed their intent. Her tail lashed, felling a sapling with a single swipe. Her roars echoed like thunderclaps, meant to intimidate, to break their resolve. Yet these hunters did not flee. They advanced still, their eyes never leaving the tiny creature peeking from beneath her belly. And then, with a sudden burst of cunning, they split apart. Two flanked from the left, one from the right, and the leader himself approached straight on. Each moved deliberately, closing the circle tighter and tighter. The baby whimpered. Its small legs shuffled as though it wanted to run, but the mother bent her head low, blocking its path. She knew what the hunters wanted. If the hatchling bolted, it would be lost. One of the hunters on the left feigned a charge, stabbing the air with his spear. The mother turned toward him with snapping jaws. At that moment, the hunter on the right broke into a sprint, diving toward the baby with arms outstretched. But the mother was faster. Her foot slammed down, crushing the ground just inches from the would-be captor. The shockwave sent him tumbling, his weapon flying from his grip. Before he could rise, her massive head swung down. She did not bite, but her snout struck him with the force of a battering ram, hurling him across the grove into a tree. He lay still, groaning in pain. The others faltered, their plan unraveling. The leader snarled, his eyes flashing with frustration. He signaled for the torchbearer. Now! The man struck flint, sparks catching the oily rag around the torch's head. Flames roared to life, their light flickering against the green shadows of the forest. He thrust it high, waving it in wide arcs. Fire, unnatural, blazing, alive, danced before the mother's eyes. She recoiled slightly, not from fear but from instinct. Fire was a force of destruction older than any beast, and its light seared into her senses. The baby cried, retreating deeper beneath her. The hunters saw their chance. With fire in one hand and spear in the other, they pressed forward. Their plan was simple: blind the mother, force her to retreat, and in the confusion, seize the hatchling. But the mother was no ordinary prey. She steadied herself, nostrils flaring. The scent of burning pitch was foul, sharp, and unnatural. She shook her head, growling, then did something the hunters did not expect. Instead of retreating, she attacked. With a thunderous stride, she charged directly at the fire-bearer. The man's eyes widened in shock, his courage breaking as the colossal beast bore down on him. He tried to lift the torch higher, but it was too late. Her jaws opened wide. She did not clamp down on him. Her instinct was not reckless slaughter, but she bit the torch itself. The flames hissed and sputtered as her powerful teeth crushed the wooden shaft. In a spray of sparks and embers, the fire died. The jungle plunged back into its natural darkness, save for the slivers of light filtering through the canopy. The hunters gasped. Their greatest weapon, extinguished in an instant. The leader's eyes narrowed. He tightened his grip on his spear, his jaw set in grim determination. This was no longer about capturing the hatchling. This was now a test of survival. The mother lowered her head, her massive frame coiled like a spring. Her baby chirped nervously, but she ignored the sound. Her focus was locked on the men who dared to threaten her child. And then she lunged. The ground shook as she barreled forward. Hunters scattered in every direction, shouting in panic. One dove into the ferns, another climbed desperately up a low tree branch, while the leader rolled aside just in time to avoid her crushing jaws. The mother skidded to a halt, her tail whipping behind her. She had not caught them, but she had driven them apart. The hunters were no longer a coordinated unit. They were prey scattered before a predator. She roared, the sound echoing through the valley. Every creature within miles heard her fury. But the hunters were not finished. From the shadows, another weapon appeared, thick ropes braided from vines, looped into a snare. The man who had fallen earlier dragged himself to his knees, blood on his face, determination in his eyes. He flung the rope forward, aiming not for the mother but for her baby. The loop arced through the air, falling toward the hatchling. The baby squealed, trapped in the snare. Its small body twisted as the rope tightened around its neck and torso. The mother spun, her eyes blazing with terror and rage. She saw her baby struggling, the hunters tugging at the rope, pulling it toward them. And for the first time, her roar carried not only fury but desperation. The rope cut deep into the baby's scales, not enough to wound, but enough to bind. The hatchling squealed, its tiny legs thrashing helplessly as the hunters heaved in unison, dragging it across the mud. Its claws dug furrows in the earth, its chirps rising into frantic cries for its mother. The mother T-Rex's world narrowed into a tunnel of rage. Nothing else existed, no trees, no air, no heartbeat. Only the sight of her child caught in that alien snare. She lunged forward, her enormous frame shaking the grove, every footfall pounding like a drum of doom. The hunters braced themselves, pulling harder, trying to reel the hatchling away before the mother closed in. One dug his heels into the earth, rope wrapped around his forearms. Another jammed the line around a tree trunk for leverage. Together, they strained, veins bulging, as the baby's cries cut through the forest. The leader shouted, his voice sharp and desperate. "Hold it! Don't let go! The mother will follow. It must follow." But the mother did not follow. She attacked. Her jaws snapped down on the rope itself, teeth slicing through fibers like blades through grass. The tension snapped, the recoil throwing two hunters backward onto the ground. One struck his head against a rock and lay still, while the other scrambled, gasping, as the air rushed from his lungs. The baby tumbled free, chirping wildly, but the rope was still tangled around its body. It squeaked, trying to wriggle loose, but its small legs only tightened the knot. It thrashed in panic, making itself more trapped. The mother bent low, her massive snout nudging the rope. With surprising gentleness for a creature so powerful, she tugged and pulled. The fibers tore apart under her teeth until at last the hatchling wriggled free. It bolted beneath her chest, pressing against her scaly skin for safety. Her eyes softened for only a heartbeat as she felt the tiny body safe beneath her. Relief flooded her primal mind, but it was brief. Because the hunters had not stopped. The leader, furious at the failure, raised his spear and shouted. Now! All at once. 3 hunters surged forward together. One thrust at her flank, another at her leg, and the leader himself aimed for her throat. Their movements were swift, practiced, born of desperation and greed. But the mother was no ordinary prey. She swung her tail in a wide arc, the sheer force knocking one hunter clean off his feet and hurling him into the brush. Another jabbed at her leg, his spear scraping against her scales. She lowered her head and rammed forward, striking him with the crown of her skull. Bones cracked under the impact, and he fell limply to the ground. The leader pressed on, fearless or foolish. His spear gleamed in the shards of sunlight filtering through the canopy. He darted forward, aiming for the vulnerable spot beneath her jaw. His strike was true, but her reflexes were faster. Her jaws snapped shut on the wooden shaft before it could pierce her flesh. With a twist of her neck, she wrenched the weapon free from his grip and shattered it into splinters. The leader stumbled back, empty-handed, staring up at the towering predator now looming above him. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. The mother roared, a sound of such raw fury that birds miles away took to the skies. She towered over the leader, saliva dripping from her teeth, her breath hot and reeking of primal power. Her massive foot slammed into the ground just inches from him, shaking the earth. The leader froze, trembling. He had hunted many beasts before, but never had he seen such will, such unbreakable fire in a creature's eyes. This was not just an animal. This was a mother, and her wrath was endless. He turned to run. But the jungle was not merciful. Her tail whipped around like a falling tree, striking him square in the chest. The air left his lungs in a choked gasp as his body flew across the grove, crashing into the undergrowth with a sickening thud. He lay still, groaning faintly, no longer the fearless commander he had been moments before. The grove fell silent. Only the sound of the baby's chirps and the mother's heavy breathing filled the air. The surviving hunters, shaken and bloodied, dragged themselves backward into the shadows. Their eyes darted between their fallen leader and the monstrous guardian towering over them. None dared to approach again. The mother stood tall, her body heaving, her eyes scanning every direction. Her baby pressed against her leg, trembling but safe. Slowly, she lowered her head and nudged it gently, crooning in low rumbles that vibrated through the ground. The hatchling calmed, its chirps fading into soft huffs as it nestled close. The hunters melted back into the jungle, their courage shattered. One limped away clutching a broken arm, another crawled with blood streaking his forehead. Their retreat was clumsy, desperate, nothing like the confident stalkers they had been when they first entered the valley. But the mother did not chase them. She did not need to. Her message had been delivered, carved into the memory of every man who survived. Do not touch my child. Do not return. Still, deep in her instincts, she knew the danger was not gone. These hunters had tasted failure, but failure did not always end pursuit. Some creatures returned again and again, driven by hunger or greed. She raised her head, sniffing the air. The forest was restless, the animals uneasy. Danger might return at any moment. She could not remain in the grove. With a low grunt, she nudged her baby forward. It stumbled at first, confused, but followed her steps obediently. She guided it through the shadows of the ancient trees, leaving behind the broken weapons, the blood-stained mud, and the silent bodies of those who had dared to threaten them. The jungle swallowed them, the mist curling around their forms until they were gone from sight. But though she moved on, the war was not over. For in the distance, beyond the trees and rivers, more hunters waited, men who had heard of the hatchling and who would not accept defeat. They carried new weapons, new plans, and hearts hardened by greed. The mother did not know how many more dangers lay ahead. She only knew one truth, written into her very soul. As long as she lived, no hunter, no trap, no weapon would ever take her baby. Not while she drew breath. The jungle exhaled a heavy silence after the battle. The cries of birds had returned in hesitant bursts, insects buzzed faintly in the undergrowth, but the air still trembled with the echo of the mother's roar. Her baby trailed close beside her, stumbling on its small legs, still quivering from the snare's grip. The mother kept her head low, scanning the forest. Every shadow looked like danger, every rustling leaf a threat. She nudged her baby forward, deeper into the wilderness where trees grew thicker, vines hung heavier, and the ground sank into wetlands fed by winding rivers. The hatchling squeaked with hunger, but she ignored its call for now. Food would come later. Survival came first. Behind them, far back in the grove, the surviving hunters gathered. Their bodies were battered, their pride broken, but their greed was unshaken. The leader sat propped against a tree, ribs aching from where the mother's tail had struck. His breath was shallow, but his eyes burned with fury. Around him, two others nursed wounds, a broken arm, a gash across the leg, but still they looked to him for direction. "We had it." One spat bitterly, clutching his side. "The hatchling was in our grasp, and lost," the leader growled, his voice low but sharp. He leaned forward, spitting blood into the dirt. "You think this ends here?"
No.
"That beast humiliated us."
But she bleeds.
"She tires. She will not run forever." He glanced at the scattered weapons, gathering what remained. Spears could be remade, nets rewoven, ropes reforged. They had failed once, but he believed failure was only the first step toward triumph. "This is no ordinary hunt," he said, forcing himself to his feet despite the pain. "This is legend. Do you understand? A living god of teeth and fury, its child ours to claim. Others will pay more gold than you've ever dreamed for such a prize. We return empty-handed, and we are fools." We return victorious, and we are kings. The men's eyes gleamed, though fear still lingered in their hearts. Greed outweighed it. They nodded, their resolve returning like fire to cold embers. Then we follow, one said. Yes, the leader hissed. But this time we do not strike blindly. This time, the forest itself will be our weapon. The mother led her baby across a shallow river where the current tugged at their legs. She stepped carefully, placing her massive feet against the smooth stones beneath the water, while her baby paddled frantically to keep pace. At one point, the hatchling slipped, squealing in fright as the river pulled it sideways. She swung her head down and nudged it gently back onto the path, crooning low to calm it. The baby scrambled upward, soaked but safe, and shook itself with a sneeze that echoed adorably in the valley. For a moment, the mother's eyes softened, her heart swelling. But the moment passed quickly. A crow-like call echoed faintly through the canopy. Not a real bird. She knew this sound. Too sharp. Too measured. The hunters. Her pace quickened. She moved through the undergrowth like a storm, tail swaying to clear a path, teeth bared at every suspicious noise. Her baby scurried beneath her, struggling to keep up but never leaving her shadow. They came to a ravine, its edges jagged and its bottom lost in darkness. The mother paused, sniffing the air. The path ahead was dangerous, but there was no choice. She nudged her baby forward, guiding it to a fallen tree that stretched across the gap like a natural bridge. The hatchling hesitated, its little claws scraping nervously at the bark. The chasm yawned below, and it chirped in fear. The mother lowered her head, nudging it gently, urging it onward. Her deep, rumbling croon reassured it. Slowly, step by step, the hatchling crossed the log, wobbling but determined. When it reached the other side, it chirped triumphantly, as though announcing its victory to the forest. The mother followed, her weight causing the log to creak and groan, but it held. She stepped carefully, each foot deliberate. At last, she reached the far side, and together they moved on. Behind them, far across the river and ravine, the hunters arrived. They paused, gazing at the giant footprints pressed into the mud, at the broken branches and disturbed earth. She moves fast, one muttered. The leader crouched, studying the tracks. His eyes narrowed as he saw the small prints beside the large ones. The hatchling still lived. Good, he said darkly. She is burdened. The child slows her. That is her weakness. One of the hunters glanced nervously at the ravine. What of this crossing? If we follow, we risk death. The leader's mouth twisted into a grin. Then do not follow.
Surround.
Drive her where we want her. The jungle is vast, but it is also a cage. And we will close it. He raised his hand, pointing toward the deeper forest. She heads to the Valley of the Red Stones. There is only one way through. We will wait for her there, with fire and pitfall. She cannot escape us forever. The others nodded reluctantly. They were weary, but the lure of treasure still pulled them onward. The mother pressed forward, deeper into the forest. Hours passed, the sun tilting west, its light turning gold against the canopy. Her baby grew tired, stumbling often, its chirps weaker now. She slowed, finally allowing it to rest. In a sheltered clearing surrounded by thick ferns, she lowered herself onto the ground. The hatchling climbed clumsily onto her side and nestled against her ribs. Its eyes fluttered shut, its breathing softening into sleep. For the first time since the battle, the mother closed her own eyes. She did not sleep deeply. Her instincts never allowed true rest, but she dozed lightly, her senses tuned to every vibration. She dreamed, in the half-light of rest, of a time when she herself had been small. She remembered the scent of her own mother, the thunder of her heartbeat, the warmth of her scales. She remembered how the world had seemed too big, too dangerous, and how safety had been a shadow of a guardian.
Now, she was the guardian.
But safety was fleeting. From the trees beyond the clearing, faint eyes watched. The hunters had not stopped. They had circled wide, as the leader commanded, and now they tracked her from the shadows. Their weapons were ready, their patience sharpened. They would not strike tonight, not yet. They would let her move closer to the valley, closer to their trap. And when she did, the forest itself would betray her. The sun bled red against the horizon as the mother T-Rex pressed forward. She had traveled for hours, her baby stumbling beside her, their path leading into a strange place unlike the deep forests behind them. The trees thinned, and the earth turned jagged, streaked with crimson stone that jutted like broken teeth from the ground. The valley of red stones stretched ahead, a maze of cliffs and sharp ridges, where echoes twisted and shadows played cruel tricks on the eyes. The mother paused, sniffing the air. Something about this place felt wrong. Too quiet. The birds had vanished. The usual chorus of insects was gone. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Her baby chirped softly, pressing against her leg. She nudged it onward, though her instinct screamed caution. Every step was deliberate, claws scraping against rock as they descended into the valley's throat. Hidden high among the ridges, the hunters watched. Their leader crouched behind a boulder, eyes gleaming with grim satisfaction. Around him, his men waited in silence, weapons ready, torches unlit but prepared. "This is the place," the leader whispered. "The beast cannot scale the cliffs. She must pass through the valley's heart.
Here, we strike.
Fire will drive her, ropes will bind her, and the earth itself will swallow her." He gestured toward the pits they had dug in haste, deep trenches concealed with branches and dust. They were not large enough to trap the mother fully, but if she stumbled, if she slowed, they would have their chance. "And the hatchling?" one asked. The leader's eyes narrowed, his voice like ice.
Alive.
"Always alive. That is our prize." The mother moved cautiously, her head sweeping side to side. She could not see the hunters, but she felt them. Their scent clung faintly to the rocks, their movements whispered through the stillness. She rumbled low in her throat, a warning to her baby. "Stay close. Stay silent." The hatchling obeyed, though its eyes were wide with confusion. It chirped once, nervously, but the mother pressed her snout against its back, quieting it. Then it happened. A spark flared above the ridge. A torch ignited, then another, then 5 more in quick succession. The valley lit up with fire as the hunters revealed themselves, lining the cliffs like shadows crowned in flame. The mother roared, the sound reverberating against stone. Her tail lashed, her muscles tensed. The leader raised his hand and shouted, his voice echoing, "Drive her forward." Torches rained down, their fiery heads striking the ground around her. Flames spread quickly, catching on dry brush hidden among the rocks. Smoke rose, stinging her nostrils, clouding her vision. The baby squealed in panic, darting left, then right, trapped by the growing wall of fire. The mother lowered her head, nudging it toward the only path left, the valley center, the hunter's chosen ground. Her eyes flicked to the shadows ahead. She sensed the danger, but had no choice. The fire pressed closer, the heat searing against her scales. With a thunderous stride, she charged into the smoke, her baby racing at her heels. The hunters cheered, their plan unfolding. From above, they hurled more torches, more stones, each one meant not to kill but to corral. The mother roared in fury, shaking the valley, but the fire left her no other path. Then the ground gave way. Her front foot crashed through a layer of branches, plunging into a hidden pit. The earth shattered, dust exploding upward as she staggered, her weight straining against the jagged edges. The baby squeaked in terror, nearly tumbling into the hole with her, but she thrust her tail outward, steadying herself. With a bellow of rage, she wrenched her leg free, muscles ripping, claws tearing stone as she pulled herself out of the trap. The hunters cursed from above, their plan half failed. She was wounded, slowed, but not stopped. Again, the leader roared. "Force her deeper." The hunters hurled their ropes, their snares, their nets woven from vine and bone. One fell across her back, clinging to her spikes, another around her leg. She shook violently, thrashing, snapping her tail. Hunters on the cliff strained as they pulled, the ropes creaking under her power. The baby, terrified, darted aside, only to be caught in a smaller net flung from above. It chirped wildly, entangled, its small body thrashing. The mother's eyes blazed. She saw the hunters tugging, dragging her baby toward the shadows of the cliff. Her roar shattered the night, raw and primal, a sound of grief and fury intermingled. She lunged, ignoring the ropes biting into her flesh. Her jaws clamped down on the net, tearing it apart in a single bite. The baby tumbled free, scrambling beneath her chest, whimpering. But now the hunters knew her weakness. Every strike, every risk, she took for the hatchling. The leader raised his torch high, his face bathed in firelight. "Hold her," he screamed. "She cannot fight forever." The men strained, ropes biting into their hands, pits yawning beneath her, fire circling closer. The valley was alive with smoke and fury, predator and prey locked in desperate struggle. The mother heaved, every muscle straining. Her massive body twisted, ropes snapping one by one under the sheer force of her rage. She swung her head upward, jaws snapping at the hunters on the ridge. One misjudged his distance and was seized, lifted into the air with a scream before being hurled into the flames. The others faltered, fear finally cracking their greed. The mother loomed unstoppable, her baby pressed beneath her, her eyes glowing like molten gold in the firelight. With one last roar, she reared up, tearing free of the traps, scattering burning branches, and stamping out the pits beneath her. The earth shook as she stormed forward, a wall of unstoppable fury. The hunters broke. Their lines collapsed. Fire consumed their careful plans, and the beast they thought to cage now drove them back with the wrath of the wild itself. The leader, clutching his torch, stared down at the carnage. His men fled, their screams echoing into the night. But he remained, teeth gritted, heart burning with obsession. "This is not over," he hissed to the flames. "No beast denies me. No mother defies me. I will have that hatchling, if it costs me my life." His vow was swallowed by smoke, but the mother's ears caught the faint sound. She turned her gaze upward, locking eyes with him. In that silent exchange, the promise was clear. "Come again, and you will die." The baby pressed closer against her, chirping softly. She lowered her head, rumbling gently, her fury fading into the deep hum of protection. Together, they moved into the darkness beyond the valley, the flames behind them casting their shadows long and terrible against the red stone. But the hunters were not gone. They would return, and the battle for survival was far from finished. The night deepened, thick with smoke and silence. The mother T-Rex moved slowly now, her breath heavy, her body bearing wounds from ropes, fire, and stone. Each step left a dark print on the ashen ground, but still she pressed forward, her baby nestled close beneath her chest. The hatchling was trembling, its tiny frame quivering with exhaustion. It had endured fire, nets, and the terror of almost being taken. Now, it buried its face against her scales, chirping faintly, seeking comfort. The mother bent low, her massive head brushing gently against the little one. A deep rumble rolled from her chest, not the roar of fury that had shaken the hunters, but a low, soothing hum. The baby quieted, curling beside her. For the first time since the chase began, they found a sliver of peace. They sheltered at the edge of a ravine, where a stream trickled between stones. The mother lowered her snout to drink, her eyes never leaving the shadows. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the crack of a twig, set her on edge. Yet for her baby, she pretended calm. Above them, hidden in the darkness, the hunters gathered. Those who had fled returned reluctantly, driven by their leader's relentless obsession. Their faces were smeared with ash, their arms bruised and cut from the ropes that had snapped in their hands. Some muttered in fear, their courage broken. But the leader silenced them with a glare that burned fiercer than any torch. "You saw her strength," he hissed. "You saw her fury. But you also saw her weakness. The hatchling is her heart. Without it, she is nothing." The men shifted uneasily. One spoke up. "She cannot be killed, not by us. We lost fire, rope, pits, what is left?" The leader's eyes gleamed in the moonlight. From behind a boulder, he revealed what he had kept hidden until now, a massive spear, its tip sharpened from volcanic stone, its shaft reinforced with iron. It was heavier than any weapon they had carried, designed not for hunting small beasts, but for war. "This will pierce her hide," he said, running his hand along the jagged edge. "But the spear is not for her heart."
Not yet.
"It is for the hatchling." Gasps spread through the group. Even the bravest recoiled at the thought. "Strike the hatchling," the leader growled, "and the mother will come to us blind with rage. Then we end it." His words sank like poison into their hearts. Some turned away unwilling, but others, bound by fear or greed, tightened their grips on rope and torch. And so the final plan was set. Down in the ravine, the mother lifted her head, uneasy. The baby stirred, chirping softly in its sleep. She listened. The night wind carried faint scents, smoke, sweat, and iron. The hunters were near. Her instincts screamed to move, but she hesitated. Her baby needed rest, and her body was heavy with exhaustion. She had fought too long, too hard. Yet she knew there would be no true rest until the threat was ended forever. Her eyes scanned the darkness. She rumbled low, awakening her hatchling. The baby blinked, confused, but obeyed as she nudged it forward. They climbed slowly from the ravine, her claws scraping against stone. The hunters, watching from above, tensed. "She knows," one whispered. The leader only smiled.
Good.
"Let her come." The moon broke through the clouds, silvering the world. The mother stepped into an open clearing, her silhouette stark and terrible against the pale light. Her baby clung to her side, tiny but defiant. And from every side, the hunters emerged. Torches flared, weapons gleamed. The ring of fire and steel closed around her once more. The mother roared, the sound shaking the earth, but the hunters did not scatter this time. Their leader stepped forward, spear in hand, eyes locked on the hatchling. The mother saw where his gaze lingered. Her chest burned with fury. She stepped between him and her baby, her body a living shield. The leader raised his spear high. "Tonight, the beast falls." His men surged forward, shouting, ropes spinning, fire blazing. The battle began. The first rope lashed around her neck, but she snapped it with a twist of her head. Torches flew, but she crushed them beneath her feet. She swung her tail, scattering men like leaves, their screams echoing into the night. Still, more came. 2 ropes caught her leg, tightening. She stumbled, her baby squealing in alarm. A hunter lunged, grabbing for the hatchling, but her jaws closed around him before he could touch it. She hurled him aside, broken and silent. The baby darted beneath her, chirping wildly. Every move it made drew the hunter's eyes, and every time they lunged, the mother struck with savage precision. But the leader waited. He held back, his spear gleaming in the torchlight, eyes fixed only on the small, fragile form beneath the mother's shadow. At last he saw his chance. The mother turned, snapping ropes, her attention fixed on the men at her flank. For a heartbeat, the hatchling stood exposed, chirping in panic. The leader hurled his spear. It cut the air with a scream of stone. The mother spun, her instincts faster than thought. With a roar that split the night, she threw herself into its path. The spear struck her side, driving deep into muscle. Blood erupted, steaming in the cold air. The baby squealed, rushing to her. The hunters shouted in triumph, believing the end had come. But the mother did not fall. Her eyes blazed with a light older than fear, older than mankind. She tore the spear from her flesh, blood streaming, and turned her gaze on the leader. Now, there was no hesitation, no shielded fury, only the wrath of a mother unleashed. The ground trembled as she charged. The leader stumbled back, raising only a torch in defense. He swung it wildly, but her jaws closed around him, silencing his cries in a spray of fire and ash. The hunters froze in terror. Their leader was gone, consumed in an instant. Their courage broke, shattering like brittle bone. One by one, they fled into the night, dropping torches, abandoning weapons, their screams vanishing into the forest. The mother stood in the clearing, blood dripping from her wound, her baby pressed against her. Smoke curled around them, the fire dying without the hunters to feed it. She raised her head and roared, not in fury, but in victory. The sound rolled across the land, a warning to all. Come for the hatchling, and face the wrath of a mother. The baby chirped, nuzzling against her leg. She bent low, touching her snout gently to its back. They were safe.
For now.
But dawn was coming, and with it new challenges. The world of hunters, fire, and stone would never stop pressing against the wild. Yet the bond between mother and child would endure, stronger than fire, stronger than fear, stronger than death itself. The forest lay heavy in silence after the battle. Smoke drifted like ghosts between the trees, curling through the night air where torches had burned. The ground bore scars of fire and footprints of men, but the hunters themselves were gone, scattered, broken, or swallowed by fear. At the heart of the clearing stood the mother T-Rex, her great body trembling with exhaustion. Blood seeped from the wound left by the spear, dripping into the earth, staining the soil dark. Yet her eyes blazed steady, unyielding. Her baby pressed close against her leg, chirping softly, trying to comfort her as she had comforted it. Its tiny body shook, but its spirit was unbroken. The little one had seen fire, smoke, ropes, and death, and yet it still clung to life, because its mother had never let go. The mother lowered her head and brushed her snout gently against the hatchling. She rumbled deep in her chest, a sound not of pain, but of reassurance. She had survived worse than wounds. What mattered was the fragile life beside her, still breathing, still safe. The night faded into gray as dawn crept over the horizon. The hunters did not return. Perhaps they were too frightened, or perhaps the loss of their leader had ended their hunt forever. The forest began to stir again. Birds called cautiously, insects buzzed, and the air grew lighter with the promise of day. The mother knew it was time to move. She could not remain in the clearing. The smell of blood would draw other predators. She nudged the hatchling forward, limping but steady, guiding it deeper into the wilderness where men dared not tread. They crossed rivers where mist clung to the water, climbed ridges where the first light painted the stone gold. The baby stumbled often, weary from the endless journey, but each time it faltered, the mother bent low, her snout lifting it gently, urging it onward. At last, they reached a hidden valley untouched by fire or man. Towering cliffs shielded it from outside eyes, and within lay a cradle of green, lush ferns, tall trees, and streams that sparkled in the sun. Here, no hunter's torch could reach, no rope could bind. The mother paused at the edge, her chest heaving. The air smelled clean, untouched, wild. She rumbled low, and the hatchling chirped with delight, bounding clumsily into the ferns. For the first time in days, the mother allowed herself to rest. She lowered her massive body onto the soft earth, her wounds aching but her heart steady. The hatchling nestled against her side, curling into the warmth of her scales. Above them, the sun broke fully over the cliffs, spilling light across the valley. They were safe, but the memory of the hunters lingered. Their faces, their fire, their greed, they would not be forgotten. Though most had fled, some would survive, and their stories would spread. They would tell of the beast that could not be broken, the mother who faced fire and stone to protect her child. Perhaps, in time, their tale would turn to legend. And perhaps, one day, others would return, driven by the same hunger. But the mother did not fear the future. She had proven that no rope, no pit, no weapon could sever the bond between her and her hatchling. As long as her heart beat, she would fight. As long as her child lived, her strength would endure. The hatchling stirred, clambering onto her tail with a playful chirp. It nipped at a fern, its tiny teeth tearing the leaf clumsily. The mother watched, her golden eyes softening. The world was cruel, filled with dangers beyond count, but it was also alive with beauty. The rustle of leaves, the warmth of the sun, the laughter of her baby, all of it was worth every drop of blood she had shed. She lowered her head, closing her eyes. For a moment, peace settled over her. The hunters were gone. The valley was quiet. Her baby was safe. This was enough. Far away, in the ashes of the Redstone Valley, a single broken spear lay half-buried in the dirt. Birds circled overhead, and vines began to creep across the charred ground. In time, the forest would heal, swallowing all signs of the hunt. But the memory of that night, the roar that shattered fire, the mother who rose unbroken against men, would live on in whispers. Some would call it myth, others warning. But in truth it was neither. It was a promise written in fire and blood, that no force of greed, no weapon of man, could overcome the oldest power of all, the love of a mother protecting her child. The sun climbed higher, warming the hidden valley. The baby T-Rex tumbled clumsily through the ferns, chirping with joy. The mother rose slowly, following close, her wounds still raw but her spirit fierce. Together, they walked into the heart of the green sanctuary, their shadows stretching long and strong across the earth.